You know how the old saying goes, fool me once, strike one, but fool me twice, strike three. A famous quote from a man who successfully led a branch of a paper company to some of its most profitable quarters, Michael Gary Scott. Now, while Michael might have been considered a great leader, he has nothing on the professor I interviewed for my RLM paper. I decided to interview Professor Pendleton for my paper because she is someone who consistently lives by the relational leadership model. The reason I picked Prof P is because she practices three components in the relational leadership model. She practices being purposeful, inclusive, and empowering. The reason she's such a great model is because instead of just knowing or being, Prof P truly acts on all of these components. She doesn't just say she'll do these things, she consistently does them in all of her courses. I've had Prof P for maybe 5 or 6 classes, and in every single one, she has been consistent in caring and doing things with purpose. Now, Prof P is a professor at Ball State University. She is able to be such a social leader in this institution because she's incredibly knowledgeable on each topic she teaches and super influential to each and every one of her students. The first component Prof P lives by is being purposeful. According to Julie Wolfram Cox and John Hazard in a 2018 scholarly journal, Prof P is able to be purposeful by focusing on traits, behaviors, and actions of individuals as they engage in interpersonal conversations to influence one another. This is great because Prof P is able to also be purposeful by collaborating with each of her students in her classroom. Prof P stated in our interview that she would define her leadership as an equal partnership. I learn just as much from my students as my students learn from me. According to a 2019 scholarly article by Emma Nordbach and J. Alberto Espinoza, this type of shared leadership is beneficial to a group when they all perceive one another as leaders. Like I said before, Prof P truly acts on this component. Every 5 weeks or so into a course, she sits down and talks to all of her students and asks for critiques and criticisms and how she can make the classroom more beneficial and the learning environment the best she can for them. This shows she's truly being purposeful in all of her teachings. Prof P is also able to practice the relational leadership model by incorporating inclusion. The most important thing to do to keep individuals included is to give everyone a platform. Prof P stated, when people feel like aren't a part of a group, they feel like their voices are being silenced because they might not be in the majority. I feel like we need to give them enough support so that they can voice their own opinions. Now, Prof P might have very strong opinions, but she does a phenomenal job leading by example with respect for one another in the classroom. She might feel certain ways about controversial topics, but she is always willing to sit back, respectfully listen, and acknowledge someone else's beliefs. I found this crazy important in our institution, and I was decided to look up more information on the topic. I was able to find a PDF titled Three Steps to Civil Discourse in the Classroom. Now, civil discourse is when a class or a group of people are able to openly discuss topics in a respectful conversation to gain a better understanding. This is something Prof P does constantly and encourages all the time in all of her classrooms. The final component that Prof P demonstrates is empowerment. She allows her students to speak their mind and be open with one another. One way she's able to do this is to get her students to feel comfortable by being vulnerable with them. Prof P stated, I think when I use slang or tell jokes, that's a way of getting people to loosen up and feel comfortable with me. But in order to do that, I have to allow them to see my vulnerable side. Throughout my interview with Prof P, I was able to gain some insight on topics she discusses in the classroom, and it was really eye-opening because I was able to put myself in her shoes and see how much of an incredible job she does mediating and directing conversation effortlessly. Prof P has probably been one of the most influential professors I've had at Ball State, because she continues to use the relational leadership model as an effective way to become a social leader. By being purposeful, inclusive, and empowering for her students, she has become an outstanding professor to learn from over the past 4 years.